They had the time of their lives, and their parents had the time of their lives. The discussions about citizenship, about good policing, all of those things, sometimes you don't think 11-year-olds are listening. They very much listened. They had conversations with their parents about it. I got reports back that they had never had those kinds of conversations in their families. Of course, Ben kind of stole the show. Shows up with Davo, and the kids lost their minds. It was just awesome. We had kids playing tug of war with Davo. They didn't win, but they tried hard. I got my 6'5", 205-pound son to try and win a tug of war with Davo. That did not go well either. They just had a blast. Went outside, got to see the TRV, get up inside that. It was incredible. Just part of what makes it so neat is this was a planned activity and they were there. Of course, all the police with their cool gear and their cool truck and everything are out front. They attracted some other kids to come over. To see our officers engage with those youth the way they did. 3 boys on bikes came up and they said, "Hey, come on over, engage with us, talk with us." Lopez was riding one of the kids' BMX bikes around the thing, and they're laughing at each other, and he's trying to do a wheelie. From my opinion, I don't think he quite successfully did that, but he might say differently. I didn't see it. But these youth were thrilled, and I know they went home and told their parents the same thing. The Harriman Police Department is different than other police departments. From top to bottom, from the direction we received to chief to every single member of this police department and how they engage with our public, it is awesome. And it is a representation of the kind of relationships that our police forces and our public should have. And I'm thankful for the example that they give. So thank you, Chief. Thanks to all your officers for everything they did. Second thing is, just a quick mention, I got invited to participate in an event with UTV Utah on Saturday. That was awesome. I've never seen so many ATVs in my life. There must have been 500 machines. This line was a mile long, it seemed like. And we drove from 5 Mile Pass to Eureka and back. Well, Eureka and then took a wrong turn a couple times and then came all the way back. Never ate so much dust in my whole life and never had a better time. My kids were thrilled. It's a great group, good people, good friends. Had a wonderful time. I just want to say thank you to them for inviting me. Let me be a part of that, and just encourage anybody that has an interest in that to look up that UTV Utah group and understand what they're about and what they're looking for. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Ditto on the police department. All right, we will move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. Audience members may bring any item to the City Council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comments for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@harriman.org or by visiting harriman.org/agenda and minutes, where there is a link to fill out an online public comment form. Your statement would then be read into the public record. With that, I will open up the public comment. Please state your name and begin the 2 minutes.
They're hiding it. Council, Teddy Hodges. I just want to come up and say Harriman Art Council, as you guys witnessed a little bit ago, some awesome music playing in the background. We've got a lot of stuff happening this summer. Even next week downstairs, we're going to have an awesome thing called the Wed Better In. If you haven't missed any of our harmonics, they're going to be amazing next week. Buy some tickets. And then the Newsies is practicing. That's what the orchestra is down there for. And we're going to be needing lots of help for some of the set builds and stuff. So if you're interested in that, or somebody interested in that, let us know, and then we'll get them involved. So that's all I want to bring up. We got lots of fun events coming this summer, and we're excited. So cool.
Thanks, Teddy. Thank you. All right, seeing no other, I will turn to our recorder for any electronic.
Our first comment was submitted by Megan Cox. Harriman City Council, I am concerned for the intersection of Harriman Rose Boulevard and Meadowside Drive because there are not any stop signs for drivers on Harriman Rose Boulevard from Main Street to Fort Harriman Parkway. Most drivers drive at a speed well over 25 miles per hour. There is a designated crosswalk at the Harriman Rose Boulevard and Meadowside Drive intersection, and I've seen multiple people, including myself and my own children. This intersection needs to be turned into a four-way stop or have a flashing crosswalk. When I've submitted my concern to the city and the police to come to monitor, they pull over almost every vehicle. This is dangerous and someone is going to be seriously injured if this is not changed. Please take the necessary steps to ensure the patrons of the city remain safe.
That was Megan Cox?
Yes.
Before we move on, do we have any data from our police officers to back that up at the current moment?
So this intersection has been brought to our attention numerous times.
Will you just explain to me, like, where it's at?
This is the up house,
Oh, okay.
right at the up house.
Okay,
And
that makes a
so
lot more sense.
if you remember, I don't know if anyone on this council was around when this happened, but this was about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. They called in with a complaint on this same intersection, the same thing. And that's when we had the tubes before we had the radar counters. And we put them out there and residents were going out and doing circles around the medians. And I had videos sent to me of the residents driving around the medians, increasing the counts. And so there was like 1 hour we had 648 vehicles, which was impossible. And so every time we've studied this, we've never been able to warrant a four-way stop. And stop signs aren't recommended or even allowed for use to control speed. They're to control volumes and tempo, but not speed. So there needs to be another way to look at addressing this issue at RRFB or something like that. So we received this complaint as well. I sent it on. It's going to be on our traffic committee for our next traffic committee meeting.
Thank you. All right.
Our second comment was submitted by Glenn Larson. Thank you for updating and allowing firework portions of the Copper Creek and Legacy Creek neighborhood. Please consider moving the border to allow fireworks for the properties along Alabaster Circle. They back up to a watered green park where sparklers and other illegal fireworks at the resident locations don't propose any greater risk. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we will close the public comment portion of our meeting. We'll move on to item 8, which is City Council Board and Committee reports.
I'll just report on the Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District. Our area cleanup for Harriman's in June, so you should start to see postcards fairly soon. Make sure you get on that and get your dumpsters reserved. This will be the same as it was last year, to where you'll reserve a dumpster that will come to your driveway and for your use, and it's encouraged that you share that dumpster with neighbors, but nothing can be placed on the side of that or anything like that. Everything needs to be placed inside of it. So that's coming up in June. The other issue will be we are continuing to go down through our private road hauling. Our district does not allow hauling on private roads, but we do it on a lot of private roads because accidentally a lot of things over the years have gotten signed up because people just call in and want garbage cans, and they assume that that's their service, and so we put them out there. And so we have been very systematically going through thousands of different properties that are on private roads and trying to clean that up, and either, if it makes sense because the streets are wide enough and it doesn't pose safety risks, we can enter into a contract with the owners of that private road, with the residents on that private road. But most of the situations are obviously in HOAs, and as we discussed even earlier about, a lot of times these private roads are very small, and when you have people parking along the side of it and the roads are very small, and then you add garbage cans to it and a great big garbage truck that doesn't have good visibility, it's just kind of a recipe for disaster for the residents and for the district. So our policy would be that we would not want to keep those, and we allow an adequate time for the HOA to be able to find a private hauler and transition that over, but that is the intent and desire of the district is to not have those private road services because of the liability and issues that it creates. We are definitely getting a lot of pushback. And a lot of it's from HOAs here in Harriman, but the reason that that policy was put into place is for safety primarily. It's because it's just simply not safe for a garbage truck to have to pull down a road and then back up through a road. They just don't have the visibility that's necessary for the safety of the residents or the drivers. So we'll continue to deal with that and continue to muddle through that. But just an FYI to staff here too, if you receive complaints and things like that, that's obviously you know where to direct them, but that's the policy and that's the reasoning behind it. Thank you.
Just one quick update from the traffic committee. A general update, first of all, the traffic committee takes all of these complaints very seriously. Every comment that comes from the public is listed as agenda item. There are diagrams and maps and analysis and comments from engineering and from the police department. It's a very thorough, complete discussion about all of these topics. So I just want to let the public know that we appreciate those comments and we take them very seriously. Same thing, just I won't go through all the things we talked about, but we did have a discussion about the advancement of the installation of the traffic light out at 6300 or 6400 West and Harriman Boulevard. It's underway. My understanding is I've drove out there, saw some work going in. And that should be done by the 21st of May, is that correct? Is that the right date? 22nd of May, sorry. Signal will be. Sorry, let's get some specific dates here.
And I've got our Public Works Director behind me to make sure I don't say this wrong, but the end of May will be for when the preparation improvements for the signal to come in to be completed.
Got it.
The signal will not be completed till the end of June.
Got it. But it,
End of June. Yeah,
okay.
Before the school year.
correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's important the public understands that, you know, we recognize the importance of that. This was budgeted last year. We're trying to get this done as quickly as it can be done.
In regards to that, if I can step in real quick, Steve, I want to thank staff in regards to their efforts out there. I have noticed that I drive by there on a very regular basis, i.e. daily, and I have noticed that every time Harriman City staff is out there working, there are people controlling traffic and making sure everyone is safe. That has not always been the case with some of the other individuals who have been out there. So I wanted to say thank you to city staff for making sure they're following all the safety requirements to make sure that our residents are safe through that area. I very much appreciate it.
Real quick, I had two boards that met since our last meeting. One was the Utah League of Cities and Towns Board, but all of that information was disseminated during the conference, so I won't belabor that point. And the second was the South Valley Sewer Board, which was held yesterday morning. Just really two things of update there. One are the operations manager down there, John Hayes, who has been absolutely instrumental in the success and really stand-up of that facility, is retiring on July the 2nd. And they're working already to train his replacement, another gentleman that has been there for some time and really working it as the kind of the second. So I think there'll be a very good transition and retain a lot of that really institutional knowledge that is so important with that facility. The second is on the thermal drying project, which I've spoke about several times. That is nearing completion as they're finishing up the final testing. That has been running basically 24/7 over the course of the past month. And again, if you remember that in the past month, they've hauled just over 600,000 pounds of dry material out of there. So they're hauling an average of about 2 loads a day versus the 8 to 10 loads a day of the wet sludge that they were hauling out of there. And they are not having to haul it to the ET Technologies, which took, that type of waste. They're able to haul this to the local landfill. So a significant change and decrease in really the operating costs that go on with disposing of that. The next phase that they are going through is the actual testing of the dry material to get it classified basically as safe to sell to the public. And then once we get that classification from DEQ, then we'll be able to actually start looking for an avenue to actually try and sell and market the product primarily to farmers for fertilizer, and hopefully start to see a little bit of actually a revenue coming off of that. But again, a very long, multi-year project to get that up and running, but one that is proving to be very successful in what it was trying to accomplish moving forward. And like I say, if you have never had the opportunity to take a tour down there, let me know. It's really, I mean, for obviously a wastewater treatment facility, it is what it is, but it's very fascinating to see the processes that it goes through. And I'd welcome, anyone to reach out, and I'll help set up a tour to take you down there. That's all I have.
One quick thing for the fire district, and it might have been mentioned before I came in on that one item in the work meeting, so it's a little tardy, but our member fee will be going up a little bit this year as they do part of our contract with UFA, now our direct member. They do a 3-year average, basically based on calls for service. So every year they do that rolling 3-year, and our calls are increasing in proportion to Riverton with stations 106 and 126, which is somewhat expected. Our population continues to increase, and calls are continue to go this way, and it's one of the reasons that we have to plan for another station on our side coming up here. So just so that you're all aware.
Thank you.
How much of an increase is that?
About 300,000, and Riverton's is reducing by about that much as well. So basically, the calls for service have shifted to our side.
So what we're saying is we're going to pay our fair share.
Yes.
I have no objection to that.
Now, we knew over time that we'd go from a net exporter of service to an importer of service. That comes with growth.
Okay, awesome. We will move on to the consent agenda.
And Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
I'll second that.
All right, Jared,
Yes.
Clint,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
I will vote yes, that motion passes. Item 10.1, discussion and consideration of a resolution approving the 2021 fireworks restrictions map. Chief Whittison, it's your time to shine.
Good evening. It's good to be back to discuss fireworks restrictions map. Do we have the PowerPoint up by chance? Those maps? That's okay,
No, there's
they
no
were,
maps.
they were in the packet for this. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. No worries.
I want to talk about it, so yeah, let's get it up, please.
But just to start out, with this, our intent obviously is to reduce the risk to Harriman City residents and property to the exposure of fireworks fires. In Harriman, we do have a history of fire-related incidents, significant ones over the past 10 years. Some of those have been firework-related. We've had a significant fire within the last couple years that our crews responded to. This was actually just outside of Harriman City that unfortunately burned a house down. A very fast-moving fire that was started by just a small smoke bomb, actually. So point being that we do have, there is risk, inherent risk to use of fireworks and public use of fireworks in particular. And this actually occurs both inside and outside of the restricted area. Historically speaking, this has occurred year after year. We do our very best to put out some information, do some fireworks safety campaigns prior to the firework events coming up, and put out the fireworks restrictions map. But inevitably, these are dangerous, right? And we do see some incidents from this. As a result, we end up upstaffing our crews on these holidays when there's going to be a significant amount of firework activity. And we do that here in Harriman as well, with increasing our staffing with wildland-capable apparatus to address these incidents. A lot of that happens, though, on the day of these holidays. A lot of it is reactive. There's a lot of stuff going on a lot of activity and a lot of calls that come in for fire service on these particular days. So we do our best to preempt that with some good public information campaigns and getting this information out to the public early. These fireworks can be discharged. These are Class C common fireworks that are consumer fireworks that you would see at the fireworks stand, right? These are approved by the state as Class C fireworks. And they can only be discharged, again, within those non-restricted areas within a jurisdiction. The timeframes are from July 2 to 4, so it's essentially 2 days before a holiday, the day of a holiday, and then the day after as well. The timeframes are from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. with the exception of the actual holiday, which it goes from 11 a.m. to midnight. New Year's Eve and the Chinese New Year Eve is also authorized for fireworks as well. And that'll be, let's see, 29th through 30 for New Year's Eve, and then January 31st. So 2 days before that holiday as well. So we could see some fireworks those time frames. We revisit this fireworks restriction map on an annual basis. And that's what we were doing last council meeting and the work meeting, just discussing what we want to see and what your recommendations would be for fire restrictions within Harriman City. Two options are being brought for your consideration. One would be that we keep the 2020 fire restrictions map as is. It does encompass some areas that have been built out over the last couple of years. And I don't exactly know when the last time we've adjusted this map, but it's been a few years, to be honest. So it's pretty much remained stagnant for the last couple of years. After our work meeting, there was some guidance from council that asked, what does it look like in some of these specific areas that have been built out and also have been requested to reconsider whether they should be restricted or not. Council member Henderson asked if I could look into some incidents that have occurred in the past, both within restricted areas and outside of restricted areas, and including part of his district that is adjacent to Riverton City. So I did that, and if we scroll down just a little bit there to the next map, this map right here is an incident map, and this is just July 1 through July 31 of last year, 2020. I did go back and take a look at a 3-year history, and the truth is it looked very similar to what we see here, and that is that we're going to see fire incidents inside and outside of restricted zones. Just a quick note about some of these incidents. There's a couple that are just smoke, a smell of smoke, which you would expect on the 4th of July. There's a couple that are dumpster fires that are a result of firework disposal. So not necessarily a field burning or a house burning or anything like that, but it is a result of some fireworks related. In that particular area, and we were looking kind of at Midas Creek, this is a small outside fire that was started by fireworks, just right in that specific area that we were discussing. This was actually...
And when was that specifically? That was in the last year?
It was July 4th of last year. Yeah, it was on July 4th of last year. It was a small fire. It was quickly extinguished by the crews, and no harm was done to any property or persons.
It was a fire started by fireworks.
Correct. Thank you. Small outside fire started by fireworks, correct. Yep. But again, I just wanted to show that we do our best to identify these areas that have some element of environmental hazardous conditions, and then restrict those particular areas. If we go back to the map up for 2021 to be considered, you'll see some of the areas within the middle part of that map there, we've opened up compared to the 2020 map. That's as a result of some build out, and there is no longer that hazardous environmental condition that existed prior to development. So prior to this, there's been some open fields of grasses and tall grasses that are dry and hazardous, but those areas have been built out. And those were excluded from the restriction, so opened up to allow for fireworks in some of those areas. And then as we move up a little bit further to the north, right in the middle of, along 11800 South, we opened up that area as well, because that has had significant build out over the last 3 years. A little piece right in the middle of that that shows a city park. I want to say it's Arbor Park. It's a park, and we own it, so it's remained restricted. And then over into that northeast corner, Councilmember Henderson's district, right? This is the Midas Creek area that we were discussing. And that area we opened up as well, just right within those neighborhoods. We still have an issue right along Midas Creek. It's going to remain an issue that needs to be restricted because there is an environmental hazardous condition there. And then right along that area of Mountain View corridor as well.
So all the homes that back that field, basically.
Yep. So, I realized that there was a fire there last year, right in this particular area. And what I don't want to do is use this map as some sort of punitive measure, right? Because that's not what it is. This is about educating our residents and providing guidance for them. When I look at this, I want to make sure that I'm making an objective decision based on hazardous conditions that exist rather than human factors. Because if we go back to that other map, if we use human factors to restrict areas,
The whole thing should be red.
the whole thing should be red, right? Yeah. And that's not what we're here to
By
do.
the whole thing, you mean Utah.
All of Utah. That's why last in the work meeting I said, don't ask my opinion on public use of fireworks, because it creates a lot of issues. But I enjoy fireworks, and that's why I recommended that the public go out and see our professional displays, because they're wonderful and they're super safe. So
Can we zoom in on the map on Midas Creek, please?
And Chief Whittison, while he's doing that, this meets state code, correct? As
Correct.
far as distances and locations and
Yep.
those kinds of things.
A little bit further, please. Okay, so if I was a resident looking at this map, in this area, particularly in the Midas Creek area, down the creek itself, I would look at that and say, if I'm in the street right next to Midas Creek, I'd be fine, because I'm outside. If I'm on the other half of the street, I'm fine. When I come in and look and do a rough estimate via satellite imagery, I see that that street along Midas Creek is anywhere from 50 to 175 feet from from natural vegetation, which would be something which is the reason why that is restricted. The same case goes for down essentially the Mountain View corridor right of way. Those houses that are right along there, some of those houses are the depth of those lots puts those some of them as little as 100 feet away from dry vegetation.
Yep.
I am totally fine with extending some of those areas, but I think this particular map and this particular boundaries of these lines have those too close to those areas where we would consider higher risk, because they're not the 200 feet as required. They're going to look at this map and say, it doesn't matter if I'm 200 feet, I'm outside the restricted area. And so I cannot support this particular map, this area of this particular map, because of that, and only because of that.
Okay.
It's not for me anything other than the fact that the public safety issue is that it's supposed to be at least 200 feet. I do not see those roads as 200 feet from those areas, and so they should not be in any way allowed to do fireworks. And if the map doesn't reflect that, I can't support that portion of the map. That's my 2 cents. I'm only one member of this council, but that's where I sit on that.
Chief, maybe to that point, to the mayor's point, do you have any information that you want to provide in terms of the decision to go where you did there in relation to the space?
Sure. The boundary has to be easily identifiable, right? It needs to make sense. If we went through with a ruler and tried to do that in every single space, it would super labor intensive. We could go in there and piece off some streets here and there. You're gonna have some open islands and things like that. And that's where it becomes challenging. It needs to be easily identifiable and make sense to enforce it, to respond to it, and for the public to understand the map. So this is where I, instead of zeroing in on, it'd be very difficult to go through there and say just this little piece of the neighborhood is unrestricted. This is an area that has been built out for quite some time, with this showing Midas Creek and the area along Mountain View corridor that still is a hazard, and be cautious. As we talked before about, yes, it's 200 feet, but that doesn't mean that Embercast and winds aloft are not going to carry this much further than that, right? So this is used as a guide for the public to say this is an area, and if you're right up next to that area, please be cautious, absolutely. But that's how I came to that, is that if we go through all of these areas and try to use that ruler, and it'll just be piecemealed and some islands here and there, and it just needs to make sense.
And I appreciate that additional information, and Mayor, I don't disagree with your, obviously, anytime I think we can err on the side of safety is certainly the best way to go, and I don't disagree with your sentiments there. The only thing I would say is, to Chief Whittison's point, to try and make that 200-foot rule work everywhere, it makes it very challenging to meet the intent of the law in terms of those easily identifiable spaces. John, if you could take the map and draw it up so it gets, keep going up like that, like you were. If you get down into the area, Rose Creek Estates, which is, I'll use my neighborhood as an example. So, John, if you take your cursor to the right, keep going to the right a little bit. And so this is just to the right a little bit from where his cursor actually is on the screen right now. You see those red areas, yep, right there, and then down a little bit. This is open space actually within the community or the development that I live in. And if you notice, the restricted area actually follows the boundary of the open space and not any of the streets in there, which for me, obviously, I have open space directly behind me. This says that I can light it in my yard, even though just over my fence is the open space. So I definitely appreciate your point, Mayor. I think to Chief Whittison's point is some people are going to look at this and be very, very literal in how they interpret it, where our job is to educate, and this is meant to be used as a guide to let them know that, hey, if you live right here and you have red close to you, you need to be extra cautious. You need to really think about what you're going to do before you choose to, in my case, light fireworks in my backyard, knowing that, hey, I'm safe, I'm in the unrestricted space, but the Embercast obviously could put me in some danger pretty quickly, and others around me. So again, I appreciate your sentiments there, but I think it would be very challenging in terms of some of the open space that's identified in here, and making that area still protected and trying to make those easily identifiable boundaries.
Just out of curiosity, this is not to, is that open space maintained grass, or is that dry vegetation? Or is
Dry
that-
vegetation.
It's natural vegetation, okay.
Natural vegetation that is generally mowed right behind my house. It's open space, natural vegetation, generally mowed twice a year, depending on
No,
weather.
and that's helpful for me.
Yep.
That was a genuine question.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it helps me understand.
And honestly, if it wasn't, if it was maintained grass back there, it wouldn't be in a restricted
Wouldn't be
area.
an issue,
because,
yeah.
it wouldn't be an issue. But again, I think you look, there's so many areas in the city that really would fall in that, to say this area doesn't meet 200 feet and this area doesn't meet 200 feet. It would become very cumbersome to try and allow some of that celebration to take place. Our job is to educate, and to Councilman Henderson's point, then, it would just be a solid red hatch mark within our city boundaries.
Which, full disclosure, personally, I'd be fine with that. I'm not big on the firework thing. I'm fine going to shows, but I understand what it is and what it is for other people, and that we need to be reasonable in our map. And I mean, that area had just been, I mean, that was one of the very first subdivisions of Harriman, originally, and it's just never really been looked at again. And we've had several requests and different reasons given. And so I appreciate you taking the time to really analyze it and see if we can do something there.
Yeah, I appreciate you adjusting the map, because I do believe it had been a while since it was really gone through and adjusting it. So thank you for all your efforts on that. And I will tell you, one of the classes I took at the league the other day, the man was from Paradise, California. Originally, he grew up there. And I guess I would just send that as a reminder to everybody. Fireworks are fun and they're enjoyable and things like that. People have culturally a lot of fun with them. And that's not what started the fire there, but we are in an exceptionally extreme drought this year, and sometimes we have to forgo some of that stuff just to the benefit of everyone, because it is critically dry and dangerous. So, and the winds can carry things, and I don't believe there'd be anybody with any intention of starting a thing on fire, but things like this continue to happen, and so I wouldn't be surprised if the state says no to fireworks this year and we don't have to even think about it, but please be careful.
Got any comments, Steve?
Nothing?
So I think I know where the council is going to go on this particular item, which is totally fine, and I appreciate listening to my input. The one thing that I would ask in relation to this particular map is that by the end of May, we come back with a plan for what our city's requirements would be, or the recommendation from the fire department for what the city's recommendation would be for banning fireworks altogether for the 4th of July weekend. Specifically in regards to drought and that particular situation, if we could get a recommendation within the next month or so of whether or not that's something that we should be considering or have ready to go, so that's not a discussion in July, it's rather something that we've thought about and taken the time to have that discussion. I'm looking at Chase, and I can see conversations going over the side, which is fine. He'll address it
You're
later.
going to say something.
No, please. Go ahead.
I
So-
don't think by state code that we can
Right,
do
yeah.
that.
We can't do that entirely.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. See, and I asked for it within a month, and you
answer.
guys brought
I'll
it to
take
me
heed.
in a minute.
So we don't have to bring it back.
I'm impressed that you guys brought that back in a minute. That was fantastic. And
That's
you didn't,
efficiency of government at
and
work,
you didn't
people.
even open your mouth. I mean, it was really impressive.
I think that's better comes from the city attorney. So thank you. Appreciate it.
And honestly, it's these types of discussions that made the legislature take action to where they prevented cities from doing that. Because we recognize, and again, that feel of being able to have some local control and say over when we think it's exceptionally dry, and some don't agree with that.
Okay. Well, unless we have further discussion, I will happily accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-11, regulating, preventing, and banning the discharge of fireworks within certain areas of Harriman City.
Second,
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I will vote no. I am going to take just a moment to talk about that vote. The reasons are, as stated earlier, I do honestly believe that the public safety aspect of this is more important. And so that is my disagreement, is that I do not feel that this protects the public safety. Not that in any way I'm insinuating that other members of my council don't take that just as seriously as I do. It's just my personal opinion that this was not sufficient enough. So that's why I voted no. Any other individuals like to make comment? Okay, we will move on to 10.2, discussion and consideration of a franchise agreement with Paul Murdoch for high-speed internet services in Harriman City. Chase?
Thank you, Mayor. So this was actually on the discussion and action item and agenda in error. At the last meeting, we discussed this in the work meeting, and I asked if you needed to be back on this agenda, and there was no additional feedback from the council. That doesn't mean we can't continue to discuss it now, but I have no other updates, again, because there were no changes made from the last franchise agreement that was presented to council at the last meeting.
If there's no discussion from this body, I'd be happy to accept a motion to table this item.
It is ready for approval, however,
Oh, okay.
and I missed that
Sorry.
portion. It should have just gone on the consent
That's what I
agenda.
thought. I thought we were just
Yeah,
gonna put it on the
it was my fault. I asked to bring it back,
Thank
but
you
there
for
were no
clarifying.
direction, there was no direction from council, so it could have just gone on the consent agenda.
Is
So
there
it
any-
is ready for action.
Is there any discussion on this item then? No, if that is the case, I'll happily accept a motion, whether it be table or to approve.
I'd make a motion to approve Resolution R06-2021, approving a franchise agreement with High Country Net LLC for telecommunication services in Harriman City.
I second that.
We have a motion, a second. Clint?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion passes. That brings us to the end of our general meeting. Our next meeting for the Planning Commission and City Council will be on April 29th. It's a joint meeting between the two bodies. On May 6th will be the next Planning Commission meeting at 7 PM. And on May 12th will be the next City Council meeting, with the work meeting starting at 5:30 and the council meeting starting at 7 PM. Please keep in mind that Arbor Day is on April 30th. With that, I will accept a motion to go back into our work meeting. After we finish our work meeting, we will go into a closed session, but after that closed session, there will be no further business for this body other than to simply close the meeting. So with that, I accept a motion to go back into work.
So moved after a short break.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.